It is a wonderful world. You can ask Captain Kirk. But I'm not talking about the guy we call Captain Kirk back there. I'm talking about William Shatner, the guy who really went to the real space this time. On Wednesday, 11 minutes. 11 minutes, it seems such a short time, but 11 minutes in space. And he said his life was transformed. And like so many of the NASA astronauts, yes, they say it is transformational to go out into space, into the blackness and darkness of space. But the real shift in consciousness and transformational moment comes when you come back home. And you see that little blue ball, the planet of ours, there. You see it in space. And as William Shatner said, to see the thin air we breathe, it's thinner than our skin. And you can see the vulnerability and the unity of life and how precious this earth we live on is. He said that was a moment he never, ever, ever wants to forget. It was more meaningful than anything he can remember. Another NASA astronaut who speaks for many of those that went into space is Ron Garan, and he went in 2008. He went to the International Space Station. He was a mission specialist there. And he wrote a book called Orbit Perspective, The Orbit Perspective. And here's what he says, just a little piece of this amazing book he wrote. He said, as I look down at the Earth, this stunning, fragile island that has been given to us, and that has protected all life from the harshness of space, a sadness came over me. We are all traveling together on this planet, yet we are not working together to solve the problems and inequities that it holds. If we did, nothing would be impossible. Nothing. He calls this the overview effect. The view we get when we see the big picture, not only of the physical world, but I think it's the same experiences Julianne of Norwich had when she had her mystical experience, Revelations of Divine Love, and all other mystics, and those experiences that we've had where we can see the bigger picture of life, that we truly are all one. There is no between. And that's what Julianne says in her book. There is no between nature and God, between us, all creatures, everything, and God. No between. The word pantheism, which has ancient meaning, but is a 17th century word, comes from the two Greek words, pan, all, and theos, God. It's all God. And there's been revelations of that throughout the years, through the Hindus, the Taoists. There's an ancient Chinese philosopher called Zhuangzi. Did I get it right? You guys aren't going to know because I didn't either, but that's okay. He said, he's a BC philosopher, and he said, the 4th century BC, heaven and I were created together, and all things and I are one. That was in the 4th century BC, that there is no between. The only between is up here. We make the dualism and the separation, and the differences matter more than the similarities. Paul in Ephesians says, one God who is above all, through all, and in all. We know the names Spinoza, Emerson, Susan mentioned Thoreau, Julian of Norwich, Matthew Fox, Ernest Holmes, all say, God is all there is nothing else. Well, there's a word that's a little bit expanded from pantheism. It's panentheism, which means God and I are one. God is one with all life. God is everything and more. What Ernest Holmes says about that, he said creation, God's creation, cannot absorb God. God stays as a mystery and bigger, and that's what lifts our faith and allows us to know there's always something more. We can always, with our faith and our prayers and our understanding and our learning tap into something greater. That's up to us. I'd like you to read the indigenous peoples and the ancient African spirituality all know the power and magnificence of nature. And this is a quote from Randy Woodley, a Cherokee descendant, and he said, "Life is a sacred circle. When we gather in a circle, the praying has begun already. When we gather in a circle, we communicate with each other and with the great mystery, even before a word is spoken." So today, when we end our circle, I want you to understand it is a sacred circle we're creating. And even in that practice, even in the practice of creating the circle, we are starting a message and a prayer to be released from our hearts and minds to a greater experience. So the indigenous wisdom, I love it. Here's something from someone, we've talked about creation spirituality because Matthew Fox, who's the author of the book, Julian of Norwich, Wisdom in a Time of Pandemic and Beyond, Matthew Fox really coined the words creation spirituality. It'd been going on for a long time, that nature and I are one. We know that. But the beautiful Richard Rohr, who is a Franciscan friar, and he's a spiritual and ecumenical teacher, and PBS called him probably the most important spiritual author and teacher of our time. He believes in creation spirituality, and what he says is, I don't think that Western civilization realizes what a high price we pay for separating ourselves from the natural world. We pay a high price for that. One of the prices is certainly a lack of just the natural contemplation and the time spent learning from nature. That's my little addition there. And natural seeing the gifts that nature has to offer us. You know, if we would spend more time in nature, it reminds me, and Deanna, you're here, you remember this time, that we went over to Ghana, Africa to visit Brother Ishmael Tete, who is a beautiful ecumenical leader, and he teaches natural African spirituality. And one of the things we did, we'd go to his mission, gorgeous mission there for his services, if you think services long, their services go on for 5 hours of praying and speaking. It's gorgeous and wonderful. And one of the lessons is he took us to a botanical garden. And we had to sit with a tree until it spoke to us. And then we spoke to the tree. We had to sit and listen to nature, and what we learned, it breaks you down from all your barriers. You know, another beautiful creation spiritualist, I guess, is Francis of Assisi. Now, Francis of Assisi sits on my porch, but that's the cement one. The real one lived in the 12th, 13th century, and he came from an amazingly wealthy family, and he was indulged as a young man, so he had all the privileges, and he got very wrapped up in things. But he became the Italian patron saint of animals in the natural world, because when he went into the service and he got very ill, he was in the military and got very ill, everything changed. His whole attitude towards life changed, and he gave up all material things. In fact, he said he stripped himself naked and said, "I give it up all," and he gave up his family, and I'm not sure that happened, but I would have liked to be there to see it if it did. Anyway, he went and he said, "I just need to be in the middle of nature. I need to be with nature." The only way you can really learn is if you just surround yourself in nature and listen. And he learned so much that he communicated. That's why they have, on October 4th every year, they have an animal blessing day in many of the Catholic churches, honoring St. Francis and the blessing of the animals, because he knew how precious they are. I mean, I love my little furry and finned friends so much. I thank my fish for being hungry, because they give me purpose. I can feed them and make sure they're all fed. even as stinky as my little dog is, we love him so much. He's so loyal and so sweet, and our cat is the best animal that was ever born, so that's all I have to say about that. But we're so appreciative because they give our life more meaning, and so important, so important. So I want to say about another quote, and this is from another Native American woman. She's a current woman, contemporary woman who's doing rights for the Native Americans, and her name is Sarah Augustine, and she says, humility. Check yourself. How much humility do you have? Here's how she defines it. Is acknowledging that I am not separate from creation. I am a part of the web of life. I have been taught that this mutual dependence is a gift. Life is a gift. And again, this is nothing new. Just a little bit before Julian of Norwich was born, Meister Eckhart had a spiritual lesson that involved a hazelnut. And he said, you know, we are seeds of God. Just as a pear seed knows to grow into a pear tree, a hazelnut seed knows to grow into a hazelnut. And we are seeds of God, and so we grow into we grow into God, not a God tree. So we grow into God. That was a test. I was going to see if I didn't teach very well, but yes, into God. So it's the evolution. It's what nature teaches us about life. There's a natural divine plan. And Richard Rohr also, besides being an ecumenical teacher, he teaches the traditions of action and contemplation. It's not enough to just contemplate, which we're going to do in a moment, just contemplate to get in touch with life. We must go out and do the work to make things better. So let's talk for a minute about contemplation. I'm going to invite you, and I'm sure all of you do it, but maybe not for long enough, to just sit in the silence. It would be best if you could do it in the silence of nature when there's some greenery around you or something alive, but sit and listen. Because if you listen long enough, this is what Julian of Norwich teaches, you will hear the voice of peace. And no matter what's going on in the outside world, no matter how much chaos and discord and dust and confusion and obligations we might have, that voice of peace will tell us, all is well. What will it tell us?
All is well.
Yes, and Julian, that's in her writing, she says that all the time, and she says, and all shall be well, because that's the divine plan. It's always towards good. Nature is never in conflict with itself. As Ernest Holmes says, 1, 1, 1. There's only one and never two. It's never in conflict with itself. If God was in conflict with itself, everything would be destroyed. It's always working together in a harmonious pattern for good. That's the way it works. We need to learn that from nature. That's what really I was learning in the botanical garden under the tree. All peaceful, divine. There's a plan going on. You get it. You know it. But then you and I need to go out and do our work. And I don't know if you remember last week I talked about Rabbi Heschel when he marched with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in Selma. He marched and marched and marched, and he said he felt as if his feet were praying. Well, today I'm going to invite us to have our hands do the praying. And that's for this week. Our hands do the praying. And this comes again from a Native American tradition. And this is what you do, and we'll show a video in just a minute, but this is, when you do, you cannot see Earth as just a creation of vast resources, but as a living presence, something that's part of our life. And here's what you say as you place, it's going to be a video of just placing your hands on something alive, on nature, and you say, thank you, Mother, for all you have given us. Be healed of all that harms you. Jeff. Thank you, Mother Earth, for all you have given us. Be healed. Of all that harms you. Thank you, Mother Earth, for all you have given us. Be healed of all that harms you. That's your homework for this week. That was 1 minute long. Did you feel transformed? Did you feel connected? Did you feel beauty? Did you feel loved? All creatures are made to love and be loved. I love you, and I thank you for being part of this community where we come together to love one another, to love all life, and be the ones that shift our consciousness to see the big picture, that we are in this together, and we have the solutions and everything we need right here and right now. God bless you all, and so it is.